Thank you. Thanks for being here today. We are here for a press conference for the House Republicans' 2012 agenda. As the 2012 session approaches us here coming up in February, there's still much economic uncertainty in our state. Oregon's economic index has fallen for 4 consecutive months. There's new data that suggests Oregon is falling behind the nation in economic growth. There's little personal income growing, and too many of our citizens are living in poverty and hunger. 1 in 5 Oregonians continues to be on food stamp assistance, and we are draining our volunteer resources in our food banks, and it's not a proud thing for Oregon. Our unemployment rate has dropped a little bit only because of people are leaving the workforce. We still have a high underemployed workforce in the state of Oregon. And our economic recovery remains in doubt. Since we left here the 2011 session, the economists that forecasted our recovery have been wrong. We've had 2 forecasts that continue to decline in our state, and we have a short-term budget problem that we will fix during the 2012 session, but we have a bigger problem in that we do have a lack of jobs in the state of Oregon, and that is a short-term as well as a long-term problem facing our state. We will struggle to fund state government so as long as this many Oregonians remain unemployed. Until we get them back to work and generate the revenues that we need, we will struggle to balance our budget. That's why House Republicans are offering some new, bold solutions to solving this problem in the state of Oregon. In 2012, we'll propose a 2-part plan to help move Oregon forward. The first part of that plan is 50,000 jobs in 5 years. Has 7 solutions to put Oregonians back to work and create billions in personal income and 50,000 jobs for the citizens of Oregon. Second part of that agenda is Reform Oregon. You have copies of that in front of you. 9 solutions to reduce government bureaucracy, to remove roadblocks, and help the private sector employ people, and also improve education and health care in our state. I want to spend a few minutes talking about the 50,000 jobs in 5 years part of our agenda. Representative Comer, come on, join us. The highlights of the 5-year 50,000 job plan include allowing working families to save and spend more of their earnings, leveraging Oregon's abundant water resources that we have lots of in this state, expanding Oregon's enterprise and e-commerce zones to help Oregon businesses expand and hire Oregon citizens, supporting the Oregon's building and trade and construction people in this state, putting Oregons back to work in our state forests, again, natural resources that we have an abundant amount of, and promoting capital investment in Oregon, encouraging small businesses to hire Oregon's long-term unemployed citizens. The 50,000 jobs agenda is a product of months of work by our policy committee, many of who are standing up here with me today, that started right after we left this session and worked real hard up until this point in time, plus other people who are not even in our caucus that help us with these policies. These measures have been analyzed extensively by nonpartisan agencies, including Legislative Revenue. We've worked closely with Oregon job creators in business and in the trades to help develop these measures. And over 5 years, and I think this is the real critical thing that we need to keep in mind, over 5 years, these solutions would generate an estimated 50,000 jobs and $7.89 billion in personal income growth for the citizens of Oregon. I want to say that again, $7.89 billion in personal income growth in the pockets of Oregon citizens, our customers. Some people inside this building may be concerned about the revenue impacts to government. but I think those of us standing up here, House Republicans, are more concerned about putting Oregons back to work first. Unlike government stimulus, the cost is not an appropriation. Unlike government stimulus, this plan offers real jobs with real personal income growth. If the legislature and the governor choose to adopt this plan, state government will receive more revenues in the future. I repeat that. State government will receive more revenues in the future when we get Oregon citizens back to work with $7.89 billion in their pockets. In fact, this entire plan can be paid for if we just hold the spending level in the state of Oregon to the CPI index over the next 5 years. I want to remind everybody the CPI index is what we tie minimum wage to in this state and several other things, rent adjustments and those types of things in the private sector. If we could hold government spending to that index, we could pay for this plan and still have government revenues increase. This plan helps create jobs, and it significantly expands personal income growth for our citizens. We hope to pass many of these bills as we can, and we believe that this is a good deal for Oregonians and the taxpayers. And I want to stress this is not a partisan plan. We're willing to work constructively with the Democrats and the governor on these measures and any measures that will promote private sector hiring. Any measures that will promote private sector hiring, and there's others out there. But the time to act is now. And there is a cost to this plan, but the cost with sticking to the status quo is much higher. Oregonians need jobs, and the time to act is now. And we'll have Representative Parrish now talk about the reform part of the agenda, and then we'll have a time for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. I think when we left here last June, there was a lot in the newspaper and media that said, you know, it was a great session, people worked well together. There was also a lot of feedback that we didn't get enough done. And so we went out, spent the last almost 7 months listening and talking to people and communicating with our constituents, communicating with the job creators in our state. I've got a lot of miles on my car to verify. We've been out there talking to folks. And what you got in front of you is 7 months of very long, diligent work, a lot of meetings, and a lot of listening. I think we feel that we don't have to have all the ideas. The people in Oregon have those solutions. And so the work product that you're looking at reflects those discussions across building trades and healthcare and with our constituents and small business owners. And so these are the ideas that we're bringing forward to you. On the reform side, you've got a handful of policy ideas and proposals that our members are going to introduce in February. And, Business 101, when I was in business school, the 2 ways to create wealth: you got to save money and you got to make money. And I think that these proposals do that for our state. They do it for our citizens. So on the reform side, we can improve education and save money for education. Representative Conger has a bill to save money for schools and direct those dollars back into our classrooms. We'll certainly see the outcomes down the road of kids who have lower class sizes and hopefully improve graduation rates. We want to see kids who have productive and skilled lives ahead of them, and we know we need to put more dollars into schools. Representative Conger's bill, we think, has a way to do that. Representative Johnson also has a bill to look at teacher evaluation and make sure that we're improving the quality of teachers so that we can improve outcomes for kids. We're also looking at the business environment. We've heard from small businesses across the state that Measure 67 was punitive, and so we've got some ideas to replace Measure 67 with reasonable and predictable corporate tax rates. We know from talking to people that land use is an issue, and a one-size-fits-all land use policy in the state does not serve people in rural and southern parts of Oregon. And so we want to make sure that as we look at land use and look at opportunities to develop our rural communities, that they have fair consideration for job creation opportunities as well. We've heard from citizens that health care is outrageous and expensive and not attainable, and we certainly have hundreds of thousands of Oregonians that do not have health care. So we want to look at the options that would help put dollars back in people's pockets. We're proposing that we allow individuals and families to deduct the cost of their health insurance premiums, and we want to make sure that the insurance is affordable, so we're going to work on that as well. Lastly, we think that we should hold government accountable and save taxpayer money. Oregonian, frankly, has done very good work uncovering where we are spending money and where we can save money. Those are things like travel and advertising and professional development and things that, quite frankly, could feasibly save upwards of $100 million a year in spending if we simply tighten our belts and ask ourselves, what is the core function of government that we should be doing? And we don't think that billboard advertising and keychains and decks of cards are probably the appropriate use of taxpayer dollars, and it's particularly at a time when we are having to make cuts to programs that we all care about. So the last is that we want to make sure that we bring transparency to the unfunded liabilities. We have a very clear, open discussion about what our obligations are and what kind of money that's going to take. And so, again, this package of bills is certainly the work of our members, but we're still tied, and we are going to need help to get these measures across the finish line, and that means we are absolutely willing to work with, quite frankly, the House Democrats and the folks in the Senate side. It's got to go through both chambers. We're open to ideas and feedback, and we are hopeful that the next time we leave session at the end of this short session, that we can say once again we work together to solve Oregon's problems, but we can also say this time that we got it done. We actually moved the dial forward for Oregon's families, for people who have been out of work. Almost 200,000 people in the years since the recession out of work. This is a plan to start to incrementally move the dial forward to put those people back to work, to save dollars in our state budget and redirect them to seniors and children and veterans and places where we need to be spending our dollars. So thank you.
So we'll open it up for questions. And
job portion of the package, you mentioned that there's a cost. What are you talking about as far as cost?
If you add up all the numbers, the costs are actually in each one of those there. It's $3.97 billion in a cost over 5 years. But I want to go back to and hear, as a business person, and you're trying to maximize value to your customers, the citizens of Oregon, we're going to put $7.89 billion over that same 5 years in the pockets of Oregonians. I don't know where you get that kind of return in a market or any investment today with interest rates the way they are. This is productivity. This is actually putting things out there that people will create things, manufacture things, grow things, and produce things in the state of Oregon. And let's face it, we are a export economy, and if we don't produce things that other states and countries need, agricultural products, those types of things, we cannot produce enough to consume here. We cannot consume enough to have a good, strong economy here.
What would the revenue impact be? That 3.97 doesn't include the Measure 67 actions that you're proposing. What would the estimated revenue impact be on that?
I don't have that number in front of me. That's on the reform agenda. Yeah, I don't have that number in front of me, but I don't know. Did you get that?
There were some things we just... Sorry, there were some things, frankly, we just couldn't score, and we tried, and we worked with the fiscal office and the revenue office to try to get the most accurate dollars. There, in the jobs estimate, there are outside folks who've looked at this plan who actually think the job creation factor will be higher. So we went with what our internal data tells us, and they couldn't score everything. The other thing that's not factored in here, quite frankly, is when you put 50,000 people back to work, the reduction on the social service system, food stamp program, TANF program, unemployment, all of those things release pressure off of the budget at the current levels that we're funding things. And so that is something else that could not be scored. So, we don't have, we weren't going to articulate what the and try to reduce the cost to the fund. We weren't going to try to do that, but we know, and revenue knows, and fiscal knows, that when we get people off of those systems, our general fund will see a reduction in pressure and capacity.
Can I just clarify on the jobs? Because Oregon created, I don't know, something like 18,000 last year. So you're saying on top of what we're already creating at whatever rate, you want 50,000 more in 5 years?
That's correct. These would be additional jobs created on top of whatever rate would normally happen. And, you know, we all know how many unemployed Oregonians we have today, and this is about another third of those unemployed Oregonians.
I want to ask a specific question in the economic section about the rationale. Why should the legislature mandate a specific harvest level in state forests when you have a board of forestry who presumably, whose members are confirmed by one of the chambers and have the advice of presumably professionals in the Department of Forestry advising on what that should be?
Well, I'll say this, Peter. I was sent here by the citizens of Oregon to maximize value to them, and if it's not being done by a board that's been appointed, I think the legislature needs to take control to put people back to work and mandate it.
Even if it's not sustainable?
This
I mean,
is
the legislature.
This is a sustainable level.
What level? I don't see a specific here about what the sustainable level would be. Is that defined here somewhere?
Anybody know the details of that timber bill?
I presume that would be in legislation if you go ahead
Correct.
with that.
It is defined in the bill.
There would presumably be some sort of a gap period. So I mean, if you were to create 50,000 jobs, you still have the upfront hit to the revenue before these jobs are created and people are paying in, right? So where does that money come from?
Well, let me give you an example of where you wouldn't have upfront hit. So, for example, if a small business goes out and hires somebody today and puts them to work, right away they're starting to generate revenues out of their tax, out of their paycheck that are coming in on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis to the state of Oregon. I'm collecting those revenues out of an employee's paycheck. I haven't got the tax credit yet until April 15th of the next year. So some of these things would actually generate revenue into the coffers of the state before there would be a cost on the other end as a result of that action. So I would disagree that they all are upfront cost and reductions to the revenue.
On the net, is there any upfront cost?
On which?
On the net. So if you net it all out, because you said some of these you would argue that there is no upfront cost. If you net it all out, is there upfront cost for if this entire thing was enacted?
Well, I can't tell you that, and you have to. Capital gains is in here, for example. What is the generation of revenue that would occur before somebody would actually pay those capital gains a year or two from now based on the reduction that is in this particular. But over 5 years, and I think that's what we need to think about in government. We've got this short-term budget problem, and we continue to focus on how are we going to fix this, and we forget about the elephant in the room, and that the real fix is putting Oregonians back to work. And yes, will we make some tough decisions over the next 5 years or this year or 2 years to get these people back to work? But that's what Oregon citizens want. They want a job. They want to be working. They want to raise their level of income. They don't want to be on food stamps. They don't want to be on unemployment.
Some of the, on the reform page in particular, you guys tried to get through last legislative session when you had a lot more time. Now you have 29 days, potentially, maybe 35. What makes you think that you can get some of these more ambitious things through this time?
Well, here's what I'll say. We will continue to work together with the Democrats on the House side, everybody on the Senate side, and the governor to get as many or the ones that we can agree on to get through this building. We understand we are in a position that we are going to work with other people, and there's already negotiations on some of these bills that people believe there's a chance to get through this building. We will work with the other side as we did in 2011, and the co-speakers work together. And Bruce, you may want to add to that. Co-speakers work together. We will get some of these things through the building, I would hope, because they're not necessarily partisan issues here. This is Oregon citizens getting back to work And I think that's both sides of the aisle agree we need to help solve that. So we'll work together on that.
So you have had preliminary discussions not only in formulating the proposals, but actually laying some political groundwork to,
On some of those issues, on some of those
some.
bills, yes. Some of our members have been doing that.
On which bill specifically?
For example, on the water bill, that's been worked on in this building for a long time, and we'll continue to do that. The forest bill is being, talked about, worked on. Which one?
Data centers.
Data centers. Revenue. Yeah.
Sorry, the governor last week in his State of Address called on lawmakers to act on his, continue to act on his healthcare and education agenda. I'm wondering where you all come out, broadly speaking, on those two.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to a couple of our members that are involved in those issues. One on the healthcare transformation, Representative Freeman's involved in that. Obviously, he has some opinions, and we'll be seeing the bill. We haven't even seen the bill yet, and we want to work together again to make some of these things happen. We understand that. Representative Freeman, then maybe on the education piece, Matt, you want to talk about that?
Great, thank you, and thank you for bringing up healthcare transformation. I always love a chance to get in front of people and talk a little bit about what we're up to. The interesting thing about transforming the healthcare system for those that are on Medicaid and those that are duly eligible, Medicaid and Medicare, is it's not a partisan issue. We all see that there is the current projected cost of taking care of this group of people is unsustainable. So when you back up from what we would be doing if we don't change anything and say, okay, well, how could we change that cost curve a little bit? How could we reduce that cost of providing that service and deliver a better product or a better quality of care? Is there things we could do now to start changing that curve? And that's what healthcare transformation is. We've really switched the term transformation to evolution of the Oregon Healthcare Plan as we've worked together with both chambers and both parties and the governor's office to develop this plan and this concept, and now it's a bill, and now it's getting ready for implementation, and we'll adjust a few things. We've recognized that it is an evolution, and that it's going to take not just 2012, but 2013 and beyond to continue to reform and to tweak the system to where we can get the most efficiencies out of it. So your question was, how do you see that moving through? I see the opportunity for us to come out of February with a product that's going to have large bipartisan support and allow the health authority to start moving towards a better integrated, more coordinated care for those people that are on the Oregon Healthcare Plan and those that are duly eligible. So I'm very, very positive about it.
What about the exchange?
I'm not doing the work on the exchange. However, I've attended some meetings on that, and I feel there's quite a bit of momentum to get a product there that is acceptable for everybody.
Education. Real quickly on education, I think we showed in the last session that House Republicans are more than willing to join with the governor and do bold things. We stand ready to do that again and to continue doing it. We're interested in reform. We pushed reform. We got reform. We're looking for more. But we need there to be, ultimately, everything that we're talking about requires revenue to make it happen. And that requires people in Oregon to be working. If we're going to have fine schools, excellent schools, we have to have a productive economy. There's just no amount of money we can pour into social services that's going to save this state if it continues to have declining per capita income and heads in an opposite direction from the rest of the country. So the jobs plan is important because of the long term. It produces revenue, gets people back to work, relieves pressure on our social safety net, and all of that is helpful to our public education system, including bold reforms.
Have you all seen the bills on either side? On the healthcare or the education?
Not the final product.
On the healthcare, there's several drafts out, and I have seen them. I've seen the governor's draft. The House Healthcare Committee has a placeholder bill that's been. I have a bill that we're using Senator Bates has a bill. They're all vehicles. Really, the work that's going on around transformation is ongoing. Just last night, we spoke to a group of 150 people. Senator Bates, myself, Representative Kotek, along with Bruce Goldberg, spoke to a large group. We're continuing to refine the little bit of adjustments that need to be made, so we're ready. Our hope really is in the first couple of weeks of the session to get the healthcare stuff out of the way and leave room for some of this this job creation and so some of the larger lifting that needs to be done.
What about education? Have you guys seen any specific bills at this point? Specific bills from the governor's?
Yes, he has 2 bills. He has the early
And
childhood.
you've seen those?
Yes, I believe we've seen it.
Just
Yeah.
drafts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you've seen them, are they, can they get through the House with Republican support, or are they going to need a lot of work?
Both.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, we obviously haven't had a caucus discussion and down in on the details, but when we start looking at a final draft or something that they're going to say this is what we'd like, and we'll have our discussion. And obviously, we want to have good reforms built into that, and we'll make sure from our perspective we have a chance to do that, like we did last session. And I think the governor is willing to work with us, and there's a lot of cooperation going on between the presiding officers and the governor, and I'm excited about how this session will get done.
So is it fair to say in healthcare there's much more details known, the work is far more down the road? In education, the details, some of them, but there's a lot more work.
Yeah, I think Representative Freeman described it the best when he used the word evolution. I mean, obviously, we have to set ourselves up to continue to find the improvements as we go forward. So I don't expect that there'll be a final product that'll be spun off into the eternity without us keeping some handle on it and improving it as we go forward over the years. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate what you do here.